Okay, guys, we're a couple of minutes over. What I'll do is I'll keep an eye on the stragglers that are coming in, and we'll let them in anyway. So can you all see my screen at the moment here?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to go through a quick basic bio of Birdie or Prue, whatever you want to call her in this. She said you can call her either of these. So Birdie is currently running the Albuquerque UFO UAP Explorations, a UFO group in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the most active UFO group in the United States. Birdie is now also involved with beekeeping, which I have to say I've had great fun looking at that on Facebook, cryptos, digital forensics, and also AI, another key subject of mine that we should talk about later. Most of us know Birdie from 20 plus years ago when she was then known as Prudence Calabrese and was a remote viewer, RV teacher of TDS and an author. And that's the book there. If any of you have that book, it's a great book and a great read. Now, Birdie or Prue started out under the wing of Farsight Institute and Courtney Brown, but after the Hale-Bopp coast-to-coast incident, she branched out on her own with transdimensional systems. And TDS went on to become one of the largest remote viewing orgs, working with clients at the time, until she departed what I call RVland, and this is shown in the three-part documentary Crazy Rulers of the World by John Ronson in 2004. Now she's back, and in some way that she will describe to us today with all your questions that you have to ask. And from all of us, I want to welcome Birdie. I've already said this to her, but thanks for agreeing to do this on behalf of everyone here, and a big welcome. And we really look forward to chatting with you to see what knowledge you have to share with us all.
Thanks, Daz. I really appreciate your invitation to come on your show. I'm excited to be here. To be honest, I wasn't planning on outing myself as the remote viewer Prudence Calabrese, and it just kind of happened organically. I knew it was going to eventually happen, and I did plan to come out at some point, and I wasn't quite at that point, but my UFO group wanted to hear about remote viewing because they all know who I am. And I started talking about remote viewing to them and doing a couple of YouTubes, and boom, here we are.
Yeah. So just to go over a few of the points with all the new people that have just joined. For the first segment of this, I'll go through some of the questions that I've already gathered from Facebook. If you have something that applies to the topic of conversation, stick the hand up using the emoticon thing, and we can answer your question then. But if you have a different question for now, if you could hold off for the first 30-40 minutes, and then you can all fire ahead with your questions as well to Birdie. So I'm going to start with some of the questions. Bear with me, I'm letting some more people in here a sec. And I'm going to start off with one of mine first, because I thought it'd be good to get not the controversial, but the historical stuff out of the way. And I'm going to start right in the thick of it here. And the big question for me comes on the back of the 2004 documentary with Ron. Where he was speaking to your husband, and your husband said that there's a very big story that you will contact him first and tell it to him, which will relate to what John was most interested in. Now, on your return, I wondered if you could share more on this and why you departed, way back in 2004.
Okay, so this is okay. So I have been telling everyone when asked over the past few weeks since I was outed, so to speak, that I left remote viewing back then. And I didn't leave remote viewing. I only left it publicly. I kept doing it and thinking about it, but I left it completely, and I mean completely publicly. Didn't talk to anyone, shut down the doors of my business, and went off on my own path. And I've been telling everyone that I did this because of government harassment and harassment by others. And that is all 100% true. But it all kind of came to a head in a really interesting way ever since I left Farsight. And Farsight had a lot of detractors at the time, even before Hale-Bopp and all of that. It was the wild west of remote viewing back then. And for those of you who might have been around at the time, you probably remember how crazy it was. I think most of you probably weren't, but it was really an amazing, amazing, amazing time. These military guys had come out. They were on television in 1995 saying that they had been trained to be psychic spies. And those of us who got involved at the beginning thought, holy cow, I want to be a psychic spy. I want to learn that. And I was one of those people. Yes, I want to learn that. And got involved with Farsight because I happened to live in Atlanta and Courtney was teaching. There weren't that many people teaching openly at that time. Even the military guys were just starting to train people. Some of them hadn't started training people at all. And it soon kind of all spiraled into this amazing, amazing situation where you had different factions, different of the military guys doing CRV or Ed Dames and his TRV, what have you. And Courtney started the Farsight Institute where he taught SRV, scientific remote viewing. And honestly, it's just CRV with a few little labels changed. But, you know, it was an interesting time. I got involved. I learned how to remote view, rose up the ranks, became the vice president, eventually left. And the reason that I ended up leaving remote viewing altogether was because of harassment. It was harassment on multiple levels that went on for a very long time. And you have to kind of keep in mind that this was the Wild West of remote viewing, and you had your traditional, I'll call, remote viewers. And it's kind of funny to use that term because it was so new then, but you had people that military remote viewers and all of their students. And they really believed that because the protocols had been developed over a period of time, they were tested in live situations, that that's what you had to do. And here I was, female nonetheless, young nonetheless, and talking about things in different ways, and talking about how maybe we shouldn't think about this so militaristically. Maybe the language you're using is too militaristic and patriarchal. Maybe we really should start thinking about it in terms of things other than hitting a target. So I changed nomenclature, I changed approach, and I met with a lot of pushback on that. And the pushback wasn't friendly intellectual discussion. It was harsh. People said a lot of nasty things to me, to my face, in emails to me, and behind the scenes. It was a pretty harsh time. And I get it, you know, looking back all these years later, I look back and I realize, you know, we have a lot of these people that were just trying to protect what they knew to be true, that they had worked for a long time on, and that they were trying to teach others to do. And they had a lot of respect for their process. And you have this young upstart getting out there and shaking things up. And so I do understand why people, maybe I made them bristle a little bit, but the vitriol, I think, is unkind and was unwarranted even then. And people would make fun of me for all kinds of things. For example, I was on CBS Sunday Morning talking about remote viewing, and I happened to wear a really cool Star Trek communicator pin that I had. And I love that pin. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. And the vitriol I got from people in the community for wearing a Star Trek pin on television, you should have read these comments back then. I doubt that any of that's still out there, but it was insane. And then Cosmopolitan, the women's magazine, sent a reporter out to take my class because I was a female, right? And she wrote this article that was titled, "How to Be a Psychic Spy and Have Multiple Orgasms." And the reason it was titled that was because I talked about the effects of remote viewing. When you're having a super strong experience, you can feel this energy rise up through you. It's essentially what many have called kind of Kundalini experience, right? And that can activate you in certain ways. And I talked about a little bit, but of course, Cosmo ran with it. And that was another thing where I received just so much pushback, but it wasn't that. It wasn't all those negative things that people said and just the catty remarks. I didn't really care so much. But what really changed things wasn't the people in the community, but it was people that I believe are outside of the community. Maybe they were loosely connected to some in the community in some way. I have no way of knowing. I don't know to this day. But I started being followed everywhere I went by these unmarked white vans. At first, I thought I was making stuff up in my head, you know, and that I was seeing, you know, I was literally seeing them, but I thought that I was assigning value to these things that I was seeing that wasn't real. You know, it's just a white van. Well, one white van became two white vans, became 3, 4, 5, 6 white vans parked literally in front of my house. I lived on a cul-de-sac, and the entire cul-de-sac literally was filled with vans, white pickup trucks with dark windows. You couldn't see who was inside. You go up and knock on the window, nobody would answer. It was insane. I called the police would come out, and the police would just leave, and they would say, oh, it's not a problem. And it got to be very scary. I was receiving phone calls with death threats, and these were very particular death threats. Now, I've talked at length in my past, and it's in my book. I'm a survivor of a rape, very violent rape. And these people who were calling me on the phone, who were accosting me on the street, were mimicking what I had gone through as a very young woman and talking about that and saying they were going to do it to me again. This is going to happen to you again. They started threatening my children, who were very young at the time. They're all grown now and on their own. But at the time, they were at home, young, and I was terrified. I was absolutely, absolutely terrified. This went on for months. All kinds of things happened. And it didn't just happen to me, happen to others in my little circle, my own circle of remote viewers. I think that John Vivanco has probably talked about it some. He is just a beautiful human being. I love him. Love you, John. And we're good friends. But anyway, that's why I left. I left because not the harassment from the community, which was horrible, but from this harassment from this source that I don't know exactly from where it arose. It's government, black ops. I don't really know, but they didn't want me to be doing this any longer. And I decided that that's it. I'm just going to stop it. But the one thing that really brought that to a head was an essay that I wrote. And I don't think anyone remembers it. It wasn't online very long because I took it down like a day later. And it was the last thing I ever wrote publicly on remote viewing back then. And I wrote a story. Well, not a story. It was like wasn't even a report. It was an essay about what I believe was happening with what I'll call, pretend it was back then, 2002 or whatever. What the government was, what their current remote viewing program was back then, because they didn't stop in 1995. There's no freaking way. All those guys had reached retirement age, so they had to come up with something because these guys were going out into the public. Maybe they had NDAs that were loosening up. Don't really know, but they continued. The government absolutely, and you just know to this day, they're still doing stuff. I've looked at it a million times. Maybe we can talk about that later, maybe not. But anyway, so I had written this essay about one of the things that I believed that the government remote viewing program was doing. And this is when the harassment went from annoying to terrifying, literally within 24 hours. What I said was that they had developed this whole system where they were because a lot of us at the time were posting sessions online or scans of certain pages, maybe your stage 3, your P3, whatever the heck system you're in, or maybe, you know, some of your matrix scans, what have you, or people were posting their actual data online. And people still do to this day, right? Well, what I believe they were doing then, and I'm absolutely certain is happening now, is all that's being collected. It's all being collected. And you may think, well, so what? Well, I did this whole series of experiments back when I was at TDS. And for those who don't know, TDS was Transdimensional Systems. That was the name of my company. And what we did was we started looking at just random sessions that any viewer would do. At first, the first kind of test, and I'm sorry, this is a really long response to your question, Daz, but this is why I left remote viewing. Okay, I swear it's all part of the story. So we're doing this experiment where we wouldn't assign and gang, I'm just going to use the language you guys are all familiar with. I don't use this language anymore. I use very different terminology, but I'm going to use the language you guys are familiar with for the sake of this discussion today. So we were not assigning targets, but giving people the coordinate numbers, the target ID, whatever you want to call it, and they were doing sessions, but there was no target associated with these sessions. This was an experiment. And we'd collect them and we would assign a target after the fact. And I know lots of people have done this today, no biggie, right? Works, absolutely works. Viewer gets it anyway, it's non-local. And then we started doing this thing where we would assign 2 targets to a session. So say Bob views his session, he does his session, hands it over, it's 20 pages of God knows what. We would assign target 1 and target 2, sometimes target 3, 4, or 5. And so the poor viewer has viewed 5 targets at once without realizing it. And what we found in the data was that the data correlated that the viewer would choose language. And this is fascinating. And I still do this sometimes today because I love it. It's so cool. It's not that the session consists of data that's mixed up between those targets, okay? It's not that the viewer gets some of the data from the space shuttle and some of the data from Niagara Falls and some of the data from this or that, right? It's every single piece of data can answer every single one of those targets. So the selection of data that the viewer chooses to experience or chooses to translate, to relay, can answer every single one of those targets, okay? So it's all things that are in common with all those targets. And really, you can take the 2 most uncommon things in the universe and find a million things that are in common as far as attributes go. So I was thinking about this, and I started doing a series of sessions on, well, what's the government actually doing? I had figured out already they were collecting data. And I knew this because I was told this by several people. But then I also started sending it out to the viewers to see if this was the case. It seemed to be. And I started thinking, well, what are they doing with it if they're collecting it all? And then I realized they were back targeting it. So it doesn't matter if you viewed the next winner of the presidential election, or if you just did a fun target on the Roswell crash. Didn't matter. If you posted it online, they were taking that session and they were retargeting it. So then the data that would then have the mishmash, right? I mean, not a mishmash, but like it would answer both those questions. And so I wrote about this, that I said that this is a possibility. I didn't say it was happening per se. I said that this is an interesting thing that could be happening. And I kind of thought it was happening. And it was literally within 24 hours that I received so many incredible death threats that were increasingly violent. I had people racing around my cul-de-sac in these unmarked vehicles, these unmarked white, black windows. And it just ramped up a notch. And one of my children was accosted and threatened with death. All of that happened in 24 hours. And I shut down. I just shut down. I told John I was shutting down, and I didn't tell anyone else. I just sent an email out to all the viewers and I apologized, but I was afraid that my kids would die. I sincerely was afraid. So that's why I quit. And it's a new day today, right? It's over 20 years later, and I'm pushing 60 here, and my kids are all grown. So it's me and my dog. You know, what can happen? You know, they want to come and kill me. Well, they're going to have to fight through Django first. I don't think I'm not feeling the same things happening today, but I'm just getting started. So who knows?
Yeah. As a segue to this, and another, you know, I want to get these historical.
I'm sorry.
questions.
I know I'm long-winded. I apologize.
No, it's great and in depth. And I know we briefly discussed this in Discord the other night, but I want to get it a bit more out in public. So, you know, you'll be repeating yourself, but you know, we have to talk about what happened at Farsight and the Hale Bopp thing. And I have to ask, because, you know, there's still a negative kind of slight stigma against, you know, remote viewing out there in the community. But now, after all these years, do you have a different perspective on the events? And I said this to you the other night, because I've had private discussions with Courtney very recently, and he is very convinced that you guys were set up at the time by shadowy intel people to fail and, you know, cause this big kerfuffle that happened. I I just wondered how
Yes.
you feel about all this in hindsight, bearing in mind you're also talking about being harassed by intel or shadowy agencies, further on down the line as well.
Yeah, I know it. I know it all sounds crazy, but it's all absolutely true. And Farsight was not immune to any of that. Farsight was, it was amazing for its time. It was the first educational institute and really trying to be scientific where you could go and learn a new skill. Farsight trained thousands of people, and Courtney was very charismatic, very passionate, and he's still charismatic and passionate this day. And absolutely, absolutely, it was a setup. There were so many things around it that, in high, the benefit of time and circumstance, you look back and you say, that was just nuts. It was all nuts. But I feel badly for all the things that happened. The whole thing broke up me and Courtney, in terms of our professional relationship, broke up, my relationship with other remote viewers. And I felt really stressed out. You have to keep in mind, I had just given birth. I was like, nursing a little infant at the time. And so I was not in a good emotional space to process it all and kind of think about it objectively. It was absolutely a setup, or it wasn't a setup, and it was truly a real and benign thing that we didn't know how to handle. One or the other. I don't really know, but I feel badly for how it's painted Farsight, for how it painted me. I'm excited to see Farsight thriving and doing all kinds of interesting things. Maybe not things I would be doing right now, but they are certainly pushing some boundaries there. And what's really exciting is to see the next generation of remote viewers. Courtney had a young son who is now one of his star remote viewers, Aziz. Aziz was like a little 2-year-old toddler, absolute freaking monster at Farsight. That kid would tear through the halls, run through the remote viewing classes, screaming his head off. He was a holy terror. And annoying as all get out. So it's exciting to see him grow up to be a young man who is a remote viewer. And I'm glad to see this whole new thing. But yeah, it was a setup. And you have to keep in mind that was the Wild West. We had people at Farsight that were coming to classes that we would discuss afterward. You think they're an agent? Think they're a government spy? And we kind of wondered about a lot of people. And some people you didn't even have to wonder. A couple of people even admitted that they were. I mean, you thought it beforehand, and then they would come up and be like, yeah. And we had all kinds of people come to the Farsight office and try to get information or give warnings or say truly bizarre things, kind of like in, I can't think of the character's name, but in Keel's The Mothman Prophecy, his version of the Men in Black, that would come up and say things that didn't quite make sense or didn't quite sound or look human. There was a lot of that going on at Farsight, and it kept everyone unbalanced, just all of that. Plus a lot of pushback from people that were working in the more strict military sense, learning remote viewing, practicing remote viewing. So it was a wild and crazy time. And I'm glad to see Farsight is still going and still alive. I'm still going, I'm still alive. And so good things come to those who wait.
Excellent. And thanks for going over that. I know it's like code stuff, but we had to get it out of the way. There
Absolutely.
are 3 hands up at the moment. Dave, Deborah, and Magic. Are any of the
Got my
questions you want to
sparkling
ask
water here
about this?
I wouldn't mind talking a little bit before you move on from this part of the discussion, because I wanted to talk about this, who might have been following you, because this is one of the things. It's so interesting. When I first discovered remote viewing, I was also realizing, getting over my denial that I was also being followed, and I couldn't I didn't know who it was. And I had white vans. I had white vans. Not quite as much as you, but the ever-present white van. Every time you turn around, there's a white van. It's there.
As Ed Dames would say, wherever you go, there they are, or something like that.
Well, the thing is,
a little remote viewing humor.
I want to call you Prue, sort of instinctively.
Call me Prue. Call me Prue.
But because that's the name that when I came to this, I thought, man, I can so relate. And I wasn't a remote viewer. I wasn't doing any kind of business. But what I was doing was without realizing it, I was being very psychic, and it was noticeable. And I was around people that I believe were Freemasons and high ups. And they were recognizing this in me, and they wanted to put us my whole life. It's been like 30 years of people wanting to put a stop to me doing anything psychic. Even in church, I've had people follow me to church, to my yoga, interfering with me hypnotically and with remote viewing in yoga. I've had people remote viewing me in yoga and trying to stop me from having visions. I couldn't figure out what was going on, but it seems to me, we can talk about this more in the future or whenever, but the conclusions I'm drawing with what's been going on in the world in my research with this whole uprising of this new world order is that I also had some Chinese people follow me to church. And I do believe there's something going on with this. There's a organized crime China thing going on with this following. And in Canada right now, this is really coming to the fore in our government, where investigations are being done in our government that there's been some really heavy Chinese influence in our government. And it's serious. And I had noticed this in the riding where I was living in Toronto. I didn't get my voting ballot. I didn't receive it in the mail when I should have until like months after the election was over. And right north of me is one of the ridings where this interference is being. Anyways, I've been putting together a lot of evidence that this has to do with organized crime in China and stopping North American people who are psychic, whether you're doing RV or not. They want to get in, they want to find out what you're doing, they want to figure out how you're doing it. Like I've had strangers, I've had people pretend to be my friends asking me all kinds of questions. What kinds of things are you seeing? What kinds of things are you looking for? If I'm reading my tarot,
Deborah, can I interrupt you? We've
yeah,
got a lot of people.
I'm just saying I've had a lot of interference with.
Can you get to a question, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. So I just wonder if the question really is if you can see that I'm relating to you, and I feel that I was almost brought here to the RV community in order to help me cope and to understand what's going on. And now I'm really settling down, and I'm starting to really get it, and I'm starting to understand who I can trust and who I can't. And it's very interesting what's going on in our world right now, that there are large interconnected networks of people who are aware of remote viewers and interfering with people doing psychic things. And I just hadn't realized that there was a kind of a constant battle going on. And I wondered if you felt a resonance with what I'm saying. Like, do you feel like maybe I'm on the right track? Because like I say, I've been putting together a lot of history from my own life, and it turns out that my own family has been involved in some of this. So it's very personal to me that this was coming even from my own family, this crushing, wanting to stop me from doing anything in this area. It's been really heartbreaking, but now I'm feeling more liberated that I found out what's going on. But it's been a real battle for me almost my whole life with this, what I believe you're talking about.
Can we let Birdie answer this one?
Well, Deborah, it sounds like you have had a lot of really difficult experiences coming into your own power as a woman, as someone with intuitive powers. And one thing that I try to remember when, and this is, this is the benefit of old age, how I've got a granddaughter, I'm an old lady now, it's pretty great. But one of the things that I have come to realize is that you can't let other people's expectations and understanding and experiences mold who you are and what you want to do. And I was young when all this happened. Now, today, if I had a bunch of white vans coming into my driveway here in Albuquerque, well, this is New Mexico. All my neighbors have guns. Not that worried about it here.
No, exactly. Believe me, I have a direct line to police detectives, and I talk to major crime because I do report these things now. So I'm actually quite involved with the police at the moment because it was in my life, but now it's really the last few years it's become extremely visible, especially with this push for the New World Order. These people are coming out of the woodwork, especially in Toronto and in Canada. But yes, I agree. Knowing who I am and being very strong in myself, thank goodness I have that. But yes,
it sounds like maybe like a meditation practice might help lessen some of the anxiety you feel when you see these things or start thinking these things.
I do meditation. I do.
Yeah, I think that can really help quiet down that fight or flight sense that you get when you feel.
The thing is just being connected and just knowing you guys are there and being connected to this community and people that I can trust and knowing what's going on finally, because I didn't understand how I was being interfered with psychically and that it was possible for people to do this. Very surprising to me, and I have learned so much. I'm going to be writing about it. Writing also very cathartic.
We want to thank you for that, but we're gonna have to move on now because we've got lots of people.
Please do. I'm sorry to take up so much time, and thank you so much for your patience and listening, because it has been a very hard struggle for me. So thank you.
David, did you have a question that's relevant to what we're talking about right now?
Oh God, I don't know. I've got a question, but I don't. I mean,
bring it on, Dave. I want to hear your question.
Just shoot for it. Go for it.
Yeah. Hi, Birdie. It's nice meeting you. Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that Star Trek pin video because I often post that video of actually where Paul Smith is like hounding around in an old IRVA conference, like talking to press, trying to keep them away from you. It really ages hilariously. So my question is that, and I recognize a lot of people in this room, a lot of people I'm sure are familiar with myself, but they understand a lot of this history. So the darkness, the plague in the field of remote viewing, the stunted growth. Okay. So I wrote this out and I said this to you earlier and I know I don't want you to, but I want you to just be able to comment on this best you can. Controlling the narrative of what defines the pinnacle product of remote viewing and defaming, abusing, and harassing any one individual or group who disagrees with that narrative or pushes back against it. Any alternative applications, ideology, or processes that carves a different path is framed as either wrong, dangerous, or both to this day. I have seen students with blind rage throwing themselves on a fire, doing the dirty work for this or these controlled forces, all to solidify this narrative for these individuals. Why the guiding hands of these prospects to keep their own hands clean to the public. My question for you is this. Have you ever felt bullied or harassed any time in your RV career, specifically from anyone from the Stargate unit, more specifically, Paul H. Smith? Thank you.
Okay, so I am not here to bash any particular remote viewer, and I have respect for everyone in the field. Having said that, this is where it goes off the rails, right? No, seriously, I did receive a heck of a lot of bullying, harassment, misogynistic treatment. People literally called me, one military ex-military remote viewer in particular called me a slut multiple times. And it happened over and over and over again with certain members of that community. I think they felt threatened. I don't know what to think. You know, I've kind of gone back and forth thinking, well, they felt threatened. I was doing something new and interesting and a little bit off the wall, frankly, a lot of the time. I do talk a lot about aliens. I am a contactee. I am an experiencer. I've not been shy about any of that. I've not been shy about who I am as a person, what I think. And I think that was tough for some people to take. And I get that. It was a generational difference, male, female difference. So I get that. But the vitriol was pretty harsh. And I do think that a lot of that did stunt the potential in remote viewing, because over the past 20 something years, I've thought a lot about the things I wanted to do back then that I was just starting to do. And I started working on these things myself and started all kinds of interesting experiments, which hopefully we get into as this conversation grows. But I was always shocked in following the field, really, how close to home it still remains today. Now, that is not to say that there are so many cool remote viewers, including you, Daz, and others here who are doing really interesting stuff. I love seeing what folks have done with ARV, with cryptocurrency, with the future forecasting group. All this stuff is really, really cool. But we are not seeing huge leaps in understanding and in abilities here. It's been incremental, and maybe it's meant to be, but I do think that we've lost something because the innovation was squashed so firmly back then that I had to do it on my own for 20 years. I couldn't just like do it in public because I'd have people holding a knife to my throat, quite literally. So Dave, I agree with you. I'm not going to give any specifics about any individual. Everybody's seen that stupid Pru Watch site out there. It's still up in existence. Someone's been paying that for over 20 years, and I know who. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Thank you for your answer, and we're all glad to see you back in the mix.
I'm glad to be back. I love you all.
The struggle continues, but thank you.
Hey, I'm here to shake things up, so let's have some fun.
Magic, do you want to ask your question next, as you had your hand up for a while?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Birdie. I have a quick question. This is regarding the reassigning of publicly shared target IDs to multiple other targets by either individuals or groups. This is something that David and I have talked about in a couple of our videos. We're aware of it. We're trying to find ways to work around it. And so I'm wondering, have you found ways to shield against it? Or have you developed methods? Is there data? Because I mean, different people try different things, but is there any data on what actually works? And I mean, one of the things we do, we don't show our target codes on our sessions when we share our sessions publicly for our portfolios. I mean, that I think will dissuade people who aren't very good at reassigning targets, but I don't think it's going to stop people or groups who are very good at it. And so I'm just wondering if you've done any experiments on that.
Well, I've thought about it a whole lot. I have done some experiments, and kind of what I've come to the conclusion is that it doesn't exactly matter. It bothered me a lot over 20 years ago, but then I started thinking about it and realizing, oh, I can set up a target that's view this particular, what this particular viewer, I can view what they view next, or I can, you can come up with all kinds of interesting ways to kind of poison the well, so to speak. But the reality is that you're not poisoning anyone's session. Even if the government takes a session I post publicly today and reassigns it 10 million different targets, it's still going to have the integrity of the first target I give it, the intention behind it, and it'll just answer all those other ones too. Hell, you could have a target. John Vivanco and I talked about this at length a lot, and we even had one target we called the universal target. One session we called the universal session. Now, I forget which poor viewer's session this was. John, I don't think it was yours, but it was somebody's in the group, and we literally tasked that one like over 100 times. We called it the universal session, and it answered every single target you gave it. So I think in a way it doesn't really matter. I think that the government was experimenting with some kind of capturing this kind of distributed intelligence. They may be doing that today. I don't know. I think they're probably working in the realm of quantum computing, and I think they're working in way other different areas in what we would compare to remote viewing today. I don't think that they're doing the same things at all, not even close. I think they're way, way, way far advanced in this technology than we are here as human beings. And so for me, it's much less about the government involvement for me today. I am more interested in what this allows me to become as a human being, what this allows me to understand about myself, about my place in this beautiful universe and on this amazing, incredible planet, and how it can help me have better relationship with myself, with my planet, with my dog, my parrot, my family, my friends, my loved ones. And it has exceeded all those expectations. I am the same person I was over 20 years ago. And I'm also a completely different person because I have this center I did not have then because I was young. And that center I do think comes with age, but it does come with a lot of introspection, which is pretty much what I did for 20 something years. Is just think and think and think and think and think and think and do 2 sessions a day and sometimes up to 10. So anyway, just to answer your question, I don't worry anymore about what someone else is going to do with my work. I'm just happy to do the work.
That makes sense. Thank you for answering that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Magic, and thanks, Birdie, on that one. John, do you want to go for your question?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I'm going to call you Birdie. We've been talking
John.
in the background a little bit, but so you've mentioned before that in the group you're forming for operational work, it may be focusing, as I understood it, and I wondered if you wanted to clarify that or say anything more, focus on contact with aliens or NHI and UFOs to some degree. And I wonder if that's the main thrust, the entire thrust, or it's a subsidiary thrust of your operational group that will be devoted to aliens and so forth.
Now that's just going to be a very small part, and that's mostly for fun. Okay. What I'm doing currently in I've been working operationally by myself for pretty much this whole time. I've still done work for other people. I've done all kinds of interesting work, mostly in the technology sector. I've got a very technical mind. And I went back to school, got a master's in digital forensics. Now I'm in a PhD program for artificial intelligence. So I'm doing all of this kind of techie work in remote viewing. But what I would like for my new operational group to do is not to necessarily engage in any kind of corporate work, maybe a little bit of that just to, mix things up, maybe help people make some money. But mostly I want to answer some of the big questions out there. So this is more for philosophical research and for understanding who we are as human beings, understanding the nature of reality, understanding our place in this world, what happens after we pass on. I want to answer the big questions. And I believe that remote viewing is an incredible tool for answering those questions that we can only wonder about today. We can only have philosophical conversations about today. Remote viewing gives us actual data. Now, that data, especially in these kinds of esoterics, is shrouded in personal mythology. When, if you're going to remote view where you go after you die, right? We don't have a basis of comparison. It's not like it's going to look like Santa Fe, New Mexico, or Juneau, Alaska, or whatever. It's going to look completely and feel perhaps. And if there is even anything after we die, right? Maybe we're just worm food, and our souls is just a myth, right? So these are the kinds of questions that I am most interested in answering. And so also, I want to answer other large questions about how we can help humanity in terms of our energy needs, how we can feed the planet. These are all big questions that are really important to me and should be important to all humans on this planet. We have way more than enough to feed the world, clothe the world, shelter the world. And right now we have the 99% and then the 1%, right? So I want to look at more equitable solutions that can be real solutions, not pie in the sky. So I'm interested in working with some nonprofit agencies and that are established out there, big names that and they're interested in this, as I've talked with some of them, talk about how we can start looking at better taking care of our fellow human beings. So that's what I plan to do operationally. It's not, I'm not in the big money thing at the moment. I've made money. I've done all kinds of things with remote viewing, but right now I just want to answer big questions. And I'm looking for people that would also like to answer big questions. The other thing that I'm looking for, people that really want to understand remote viewing, especially how it works for themselves. So that's a whole nother discussion, but that's what and if we talk to aliens, that is just the icing on the cake.
Well, thanks for the answer. As you know, I'm also active with Danny Sheehan's group, so I don't stay away from the UFO topic, but your answer actually makes me even more interested in coming to your course in October, because as you know, I'm also interested in philosophical questions and so forth. So thank you.
Exactly. Thanks, John. I'm glad you're in my October class. I'm very excited about it. My August class starts in a week and a half.
Right.
And it's going to be so much fun.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, John. Anita, do you want to go next?
I'm talking a lot, so I'm just drinking some cranberry hibiscus sparkling water.
Take as many breaks as you need.
This is not a sponsored product.
So, hi, Birdie. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I joined the remote viewing community in 2018, so it's been over 6 years. So I never met you, but of course I have heard of you, so it's really nice to have you back. I'm wondering, Daz, when you write tasking for a target, you seem to write the target is only this thing. You always specify it's only this thing, the intended target. Now, how can someone then assign another target for that session? If Daz were to write the target is only this, would our subconscious, or that which remote views, still disobey the tasking which we see first, as Daz would write it, and still retrieve or connect with something else? Now there's a follow-up question. So when someone hijacks a session, so here's the second question. So if someone hijacks the session because they want to trick you into remote viewing their target within your session without you knowing it, you say the data that comes through is that which is in common for the intended target as well as the hijacked target. Is that the only data then that comes through? Because, or is there a combination? Do you only get mutual data? Because if there also is data of the intended target, how would the hijackers know when they then look at they get your report and they get excited? Yes, we're going to get our data here. How do they know which data is the in common one, or is it only in common? Because that would cut out so much of the data which you wanted of your intended target, if all of this isn't too confusing.
No, I understand perfectly what you just asked. And okay, so I have to get into one of my philosophies in remote viewing here. And I have believed this since my days back at TDS. I used to tell students, you get what you get. And it was one of the things I began talking about back then. And it's become kind of my base layer in terms of belief system around remote viewing. And it is this, that your mind when you're remote viewing, your mind only produces data, only gives you data, the experience that you're trying to translate. That's how I prefer to talk about it. The experience that you're translating. The translation that you give is 100% accurate. It's 100%. You're 100% right all the time. You don't miss a target ever. You're 100% correct. Now, the translation that you provide may not look like it's a hit, right? But it is always a hit. Your mind is trying to make sense of everything that you're experiencing when you're viewing. So if you know, people talk about things like, this is like a 6-hour lecture here that I'm going to try to condense into 90 seconds. But if you look at something and you get the AOL, the analytic overlay, the deduction in other systems of remote viewing, the whatever you want to call it, that it is the Grand Canyon, and it's not the Grand Canyon. So you write that off to the side, right? In most systems of remote viewing, and you think, well, it's not that, I'm just going to forget about it. But the reality is that there's some reason that you put that down. It's not, even if it's just something you thought you were just thinking about or trying to make sense of, there's a reason you put that down, and you have to deconstruct what that reason is. And so what I make students do, and I'm going to get back and answer your question because I have to explain this first, is with new students, every single session, whatever they do and in whatever form we produce it, because I'm working in different media now, is you have to deconstruct every single tiniest little piece of data and justify it. Why did I do this? And the reason that you do this justification exercise is because it trains your mind. It trains your subconscious, your mind, your whatever the hell you want to call that part of you or that essence of your consciousness that's providing this data. It trains you to understand what you're looking for and to give you something that's more direct and that others can more easily appreciate the next time. Otherwise, if you just say, oh, that was wrong, your mind is going to start shutting down to some degree because it's going to say, you keep telling me I'm wrong. You keep telling me I'm wrong. It's like a dog. You try to train your dog and you keep telling it, bad dog, bad dog, bad dog. That dog ain't ever going to be a good dog. It's the same thing with remote viewing. You have to appreciate and love every single piece of data and understand from what part of this little pea brain it came from. And then you become a much like exponentially better remote viewer. Your experience becomes deeper, more interesting, more intricate. You feel like you're really having an incredible all-encompassing experience when you allow yourself to say, I am always correct. There's super value in this. I absolutely promise everyone, spend 2 weeks doing this every single day, and I swear you'll be on my side. So anyway, so having said all that, the data comes in layers. It always comes in layers. It always does, because of who we are as our culture, our personal histories, our fears, our expectations, our traumas, all of these things help produce, it's part of our translation process. I've studied a heck of a lot of linguistics over the past 20 years. It's one of my pet things to study these days. Super interesting how we form language, what language we choose to use, why we choose to use it. It's all the same in remote viewing. We are choosing the language because we've had certain experiences. And so if you task something, and even if you use the word only, well, sure, it's going to produce only for that target. Absolutely, it's going to produce a session that only relates to that target. And it's going to be 100% correct, whether you see it or not. And then, upon reflection, you should be able to see it. It takes a little training to get yourself to that point, a lot of introspection. And then after a while, I've been working with this one student who's probably going to watch this. And he's coming to August. Anyway, I've worked with him for a couple of years, just over Zoom. I met him at the Roswell the Roswell UFO Festival. We were standing in line and just got to talking. And he's like, have you ever heard about remote viewing? And I about lost it laughing. Yeah, I've heard of it. And then he asked me if I heard about Farsight. And then I started to wonder, oh, government. Nah, he just was like super into what Farsight was doing. And he about fell over when he found out who I was. But anyway, so he's a student of mine for a couple of years. And he finally told me, it took him a long time because he had been working on line doing the Farsight method, doing CRV, watching everybody, everybody's videos. And finally it hit him. Oh my God, you're right. But it took him a long time to get to that point. And I think that people who have been practicing the more established methods of remote viewing, the traditional, so to speak, even though it's only a 30-year-old tradition, they're, it's hard to see that every single piece of data is 100% correct. But once you get it and it changes you. And so it doesn't matter if the task is only get this session data, you are only going to get that session data. And then someone else can then retask it and say, only get this session data. And you know what? It's only going to answer both of those things. It does only have data that pertains to X target, and it only has data that relates to Y target. It's like the data in common, and that it's not limiting. I know that it may sound like you're only going to pick, well, then we're only going to have the color red in this session because that's the only color in common. It doesn't work like that. It's all these multiple layers when you translate your experience that come out, and those layers tell you something. So if you write an AOL and it's Disneyland, it doesn't mean that the only relevant layer there is you heard some kind of childlike music, or you felt that there were children there, or maybe you felt there were something like character, larger than life characters or whatever. It's usually multiple things locked up in that. So I know I'm over the map here, but I hope I answered that kind of.
Is that
Yes,
okay,
no,
Anita?
maybe. Is that good? Or at least something to think about?
I know what you're talking about, Birdie. I do something similar.
Yeah.
I do an adapted form of CRV now, and in my method, I pass out personal journals to each of the people that I mentor, and ask them after each remote viewing session to then go back through it, analyze it, and write notes on what they did, right, wrong,
Excellent.
all that kind of stuff, and essentially journal their whole experience.
Excellent. See, that is how you become a better viewer. It's not just in simply seeing if you're right or wrong. It's in the evaluation, and that just enhances your own mental powers and your own ability to talk to yourself. It's really like learning another language is really what this is.
As I say to people, when you do RV, you learn more about yourself than you do anything else.
That is correct. More about you than the target every time.
I'll go to a question now from Christian from Facebook. He says, how different from TDRV or CRV is your new way of doing remote viewing?
Okay, so I call what I do these days transdimensional mapping. And I started thinking about this process as a map a long time ago. Actually, when I was at TDS, I used to think, wow, it's like kind of like doing a map, but it's really a map of what you're experiencing and a map of your own mind. And I just kind of took that thing to an extreme. So I do sometimes use pen and paper and do things that may be akin similarly to TDRV, but I more often do not use pen and paper at all. I feel this is a full body, or should be a full body experience. I mean, we tend to sit down at a table, right? If we're learning remote viewing, got your pen and paper out. And when you think about it, you think it's all coming from between your ears here. But honestly, there is so much that comes from like your gut, that comes from your arms, your legs. There's a lot of memory and experience and interesting things that come out of your full body. And if you have an opportunity to move it in certain ways, use it in certain ways, you're going to experience the target way more fully. You're going to feel and understand what someone else is who's there at that target. I don't like the here and there kind of analogy. I think we're everywhere at once, but I think that using, so I'm doing a lecture on transdimensional mapping, my whole new wingding that I'm doing. Well, it's not new to me, but it's new to you. I'm going to be giving a lecture in a week from Monday, an introductory lecture on what all this is, because it's way too long to get into here. But the difference is, and you can find all that on my meetup page or my Facebook, And I think Daz posted it in the remote viewing Facebook group.
Yeah.
But I use my full body. I use clay and I draw maps. I literally draw maps. I have huge, huge, huge rolls of paper that I roll out, and I'll lay on the floor and I will start constructing the experience from the ground up and creating this really intense 3D model of what is going on here. And it makes everything come so alive. And part of what I do, though, is in the analysis. It's in working with myself and then with students to deconstruct everything that they're doing so that they understand things better. And then also a big part of this is working with language itself, because I believe that that's one of the keys here, because the only way you can share your experience with someone else is through language. And so I've done a lot of experimentation. So a big part of the transdimensional mapping is linguistics and paying attention to linguistics in what you're doing. So I know that's like super, super short and doesn't even begin to encompass what I'm doing today, but that's some of the ways in which it differs. It's a full body process that involves literally everything you got, everything on the in and on the outside that you got, involves working in the 3D and being extraordinarily, and I mean extraordinarily careful about the translation, about your language. And I also do a lot of sessions in Spanish. I am fluent in Spanish, but English is my first language. And I have found, this is just a throwaway aside, but I have found that doing sessions in Spanish makes when I do other sessions and I think in English, like 1,000 times better. So it's part of this whole linguistics process. So if you are multilingual and have a second language, highly recommend doing sessions in your learned language as opposed to your given from birth language, because the process by which you learned each of those languages is very, 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 very different. You know, taking on a language as opposed to growing up in a language. It's a different, completely different process. I encourage everyone to read Noam Chomsky and his thoughts on how we learn a language, because if you start reading all that, you're going to be thinking about how you learn the language of remote viewing. So, cool.
Excellent. Thanks
Tidbit.
for that. Yeah. John, you have a question on this?
Yeah, follow-up question on that. So, Birdie, in your new method, have you found that there's like a typology of viewers? You used to say there are, basic data viewers and conceptual that. Do you find any kind of common patterns in the viewers that you've taught this new method that divides them into groups, or is it all totally individual?
It's okay. There are different groups. People, it's kind of like you can divide people into groups just generally in life by what they like to do. We've got our musicians, we've got our sports people, we've got our nerds, and it's the same with remote viewing. There are people, I consider myself a conceptual remote viewer, 100%. I have worked very hard at becoming more visual, and I'm way, like, by a million times more visual than I was back then. And that's just through a lot of hard work. But I always know what is happening when I'm remote viewing something. I'm never wrong about that. I'm never wrong about anything, right? It's 100% correct. But I know, like, from the get-go, what the heck's going on when I immerse myself in an experience. I know what's happening and I know why. That's like my gift. That's my true gift in all this. The what and the why. I'm your girl. I'm absolutely your girl. You need to know those things, call me. Now, other people, they're really going to fixate on the topology and the visual features, or the geometry of something. There's more visual viewers, and there's subsets of all these. I actually have a huge chart I made, which I'll post it on Facebook. I'll post it on the remote viewing Facebook. I've got to find it. It's on an old hard drive. It's really kind of cool. But you've got your visual viewers, your conceptual viewers, you've got your emotional viewers who really connect with the sentience at a during an experience at a target. And so there are different archetypes, and no one's like just this or just that. Everyone's a combination of things, but there's one think there's like a strength in there. So you can usually put yourself in a category. So I'm conceptual for sure. Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that chart. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. I have a double question here from Bill Rogers on Facebook, but also Paul Cosby, who's here in the chat. And it's about, Paul asks, could you talk about your contactee kind of experiences? And Bill Rogers asked, how many alien races do you know from your experiences on remote viewing?
Yeah. So I've had a lot of contact experience going back to 7 years old. That's the earliest I remember. I've talked about all these at length over time. When I was 7, I was with my sister, who's a year younger than me, and we both saw a spaceship out, the saucer outside our window. We were playing with dolls. I saw a big, huge diamond-shaped ship when I was teenager at a slumber party. There's 7 of us girls that saw this. And I've had multiple experiences like that. I did have when I first took on remote viewing, I started having these encounters. The gray dude encounters. I've written about it. It's in my book. Used to have a website about the gray dude, called him the gray dude because it's this cute name for it, but it was a gray type entity. And it would give me these messages, which I called thought balls. I still call them that to this day. And I haven't unraveled even a tenth of all those. It was like it's really hard to describe, but like a ball of yarn, just like inserted in my mind. And it has so many layers, really tough to unravel. And I've spent a lifetime and haven't come close. Those experiences went on for about 2.5 years. And then I didn't see him. And then, I don't know, it was like 6 years ago, I think. Yeah, it was after my mom passed away. And it was a few months after that, I had one more encounter with the little gray dude guy. Got another thought ball, which I haven't even done anything with. It's still, I can feel it, literally feel it in my head. And one of these days I'll write about all this again from a more mature, older perspective and what I've discovered in the 20 years since trying to unravel all this, because there is a lot of really cool stuff in there. A lot of it has to do with this stuff I've been developing, the transdimensional mapping. A lot of it has to do with how I think about things and how I think about just all this phenomenon in general. So, but I don't have like daily encounters anymore. Every once in a while, I'll see weird lights in the sky like everybody does here in New Mexico. But it's been my lifelong passion, the whole field. I started a UFO group just over a year ago here in Albuquerque, and it quickly became the most active UFO group in the whole country. And everyone's invited to join. We do online stuff. We do stuff in person, and we're having a big conference in April. I will be speaking at it. I didn't put myself on the conference website, but I'm going to give a secret talk on UFOs and remote viewing. And the day after the conference, I'm going to do a full day remote viewing extravaganza where I'm just going to teach the wackiest stuff I know how to do, and everyone's invited to attend. So no limits, everyone can come. That's the day after the conference. So that'll be April 7th, I think, something like that. Anyway.
Sounds
yeah,
awesome.
so that's yeah. I want everyone to come and just have a big old party in Albuquerque, like an impromptu kind of conference. We can all share interesting things, and I'll teach you some really, really cool, weird alien stuff because it is an alien conference. And
Excellent.
yeah, so everybody's invited. But yeah, I'm a contactee. I'm not ashamed of it. It's real. What are they doing here? Beats me. They're interested. I think that we've reached a point in our growth as a human species where we are coming into our own with some of these new abilities. Maybe it's probably an evolutionary thing. In addition, our society, societal evolution, how our society has shifted. Nuclear energy is, been of high interest, it seems to me, from all the different sightings that people have reported. Nuclear facilities, the turning on and off of various nuclear devices and bombs and this and that. I think that we're like entertainment. And I mean, not that we're, not like it's watching a TV show, but I think that they're interested in what we're doing. Maybe they care about what's happening to us, or maybe they just know, hey, this is their make or break time. Everybody come and take a look. Let's see if these crazy humans do it or not. Do they make it past this stage? This is, I think, a critical stage for humanity. We have, enough firepower to kill every man, woman, and child on this planet. And we also have the ability to feed every man, woman, and child. And it's up to us right now. We're making those decisions today. Yeah. Those decisions are being made today. And I hope everyone gets to the right side of that equation. We'll see.
Thanks for the answers on that one, Birdie.
Yeah.
Don, you got your hand up next. Would you like to go?
Okay, yeah. Prue, you mentioned your book there. Is that something that we can get, or, you know, is there a PDF of it or something like that? Because I think I searched around and I couldn't
It
find
has
it.
been out of print for years. And I have like 30 copies left from the original very first printing. And I literally, Carrie, I know you're on here. I finally sent your stuff. You should be getting it any day now if you didn't get it already. So Carrie won a book. I've been giving them out as like prizes at my UFO group. Every time we've got a meetup, I have a free drawing and everybody is like, oh God, or is she going to raffle off her book again?
Okay, so there's no PDF of it then.
I actually do have a PDF of it. I'm thinking of putting it back up. I'm thinking of putting it up at my my website where I'm going to kind of record all of my remote viewing thoughts. It's norivets.com, NORIVETS, norivets.com. And I'm going to be putting my lecture series there. Some of the lectures I will put up on YouTube so everyone can watch, and others are just going to be at the website, but they're all free to watch anyway. Just sign up for the lecture series and then you get notified every time there's a new one. I'm going to be covering all kinds of interesting stuff in that, including alien communication, remote healing and diagnosis, all kinds of weird stuff you've never thought about. I guarantee that I've been thinking about. We're going to cover how to monitor your brain waves, which Don and I are going to be talking about real soon. And but my book it's a trip. Okay, people have read it. It's a trip. Was very controversial.
I want a trip. Okay, so if you've got a PDF and you're going to put it somewhere, I'd like to know about it.
Okay.
The other thing is, you mentioned
know.
I don't know, like maybe 3 or was it 4 or 2, 3, 4 web sites or whatever, where you're going to be doing something here, there, and whatever. Do you have can you post your URLs to these things?
Oh, like post them here. I'll post them in the meeting group chat. Here, I'm going to put if
you post them in the chat, I'll also copy them to the description that will go on the YouTube for this as well.
Okay, so my personal site is where you're going to find all the remote viewing stuff now that I'm back talking publicly. There we go. And then I'll put my UFO group in case anyone's interested in following that. So
is that only UFOs, or are you getting into remote viewing there too, or your experimental stuff, or
Okay, so the UFO group is mostly just UFOs, but that's how I was just found out, pushed back out of the closet here, is because when I started the group, I let everybody know from day one my whole background. I said, hey, this is me. Here's my book. This is what I used to do. And nobody had ever heard of remote view, or maybe they heard about it, really didn't know anything. And they're all just looking at me like, huh? I was so nervous to have that first group meeting too. I thought, okay, I'm going to tell them. And it was all crickets over there.
Okay. Now you mentioned a lecture coming up. Was it next week?
It's on August 19th. And it looks like Daz just posted that in the chat, and there's like you can if you go to my meetup, you can sign up. It's all free. Sign up there, and then there's a Zoom, and you can get in. Only reason I put it through Meetup is because there's like a limit to the number of people before my Zoom will kick you out. So I wanted to limit the size, but it'll be available afterward. But if you come in and come in on the lecture live on Zoom, then you can ask questions after I lecture your butt off.
Well, I'm going to try to make it, and I'll turn it over to the next question here.
Okay, thanks, Don.
Yeah, thanks, Don. David, you're up next. Hi there.
Yes. Hi, Birdie. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I appreciate it. I have just maybe two quick questions, I hope. First one is are your remote viewing session work, is that on your website that you linked there? Just because I'd be interested in looking at your session work. Do you have that posted up there?
I've just started putting that site up. I don't really have
Okay.
anything up there except for a couple of YouTubes from my UFO group where I talk about remote viewing and an essay on UFO stuff. But I am going to be putting all kinds of interesting stuff up there as time passes on. So I only came out of the closet like 3 weeks ago. So
Okay, no worries.
give a girl some time here.
Yeah, no worries. The second question is kind of two parts. It's associated with your focus on AI activities, essentially. And two things I'm kind of curious about is, one would be, what data sets have you kind of like focused on to train with? The second part is, what kind of model are you using? Like, is it a large language model? Is it one of the other ones that you're using for this focus?
Okay, so what I'm doing with AI and analysis is super, super, super interesting. I've been working on this for a while, and I do plan to make this available to everyone to play around with. But so I started thinking, so I believe that all the data is relevant. So you should be able to take any session from anywhere, feed it into an AI, right? If you set it up properly, train it properly, and it should spit out an answer what the target is. So that was my goal at the beginning. And so what I did was I started, I am using large language models, a number of them, and I'm using a number of algorithms to weigh the data and to pick targeted attributes in setting up my AI model. So what my model does is I feed in all the session data, right? And it utilizes different large language models to evaluate all the data in a session. So, and it compares it to what in the world it could be. So, and it takes into consideration all those layers. I've trained it on, okay, I own you have no idea how much data I own. I've trained it on so much data. It is absolutely freaking insane. Probably over 10,000 sessions worth of data. And it is incredibly accurate. So you can feed it in the data in any session, and it's only using, I'm working on adding the visual data as an input, but at the moment it is just the text data. And so what it produces is literally a series of answers, weighted answers in terms of probability, what the target is. So say you do a session on, it could be absolutely anything. You feed it in and it says, okay, so the AI is thinking, and it'll say, oh, brown and hard and this and that. And then even with your higher level data or your AOLs or your deductions, whatever the heck you want to call it, it takes those into consideration too, because as I said, the answer is in those things. It's just layered. And it takes the combination of everything in that session and says, well, if it has all of these attributes, and then here are the probabilities of what it could be. And I've done, last week I had done 287 trials. I'm up to 306 trials now, and it is 99%. It is the top probability has been literally the target for those sessions. It literally is named the target 99% of the time as the top, and it's 100% of the time has been in the top 3 weighted probabilities, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
One follow-up question, then, just out of curiosity, how many viewers roughly in terms of the session work? Is it like a smaller set of viewers or kind of like a broader range of viewers that you're looking at their work?
Oh, this is all my old transdimensional systems work. It's all the work everyone did all those years ago, plus all the sessions I've done over 20 years.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Plus I stole all the session work off of 10,000 roads.
Okay. Yep. No, that's fine. All right. Thank
Back
you very
in the
much. I
day.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
you're welcome.
I don't think we'll mention that one.
Sorry.
Pablo, you had your hand up next. Hi there.
Thank you very much. I have a quick question, Birdie. So when you are having, the session going, sometimes the sessions may be more intense or no, right? But have you noticed afterwards the session if anything around you has changed? And I mean, probably more into the PK world, but if something you have nearby changed, it could be a plant, it could be even a word in a book or something like that.
Oh, so are you asking if the act of viewing has changed my reality? Is that the question? Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. So, I'm honestly going to say yes to this question, and I don't have any proof of it, but I have had several times. It's only been a few times when I sincerely felt at the end of a particularly intense experience that there was something different about the world after that. And it was always something quite intangible. I couldn't figure out. Everything still seemed to look the same, smell the same, taste the same, sound the same, but still there was a quality that felt different. And I didn't know if it was simply having that deep experience made me a different person, or if it's a question of quantum entanglement or whatnot. And I literally, entered some kind of new reality. I don't know, but I have had that, and it's only been a few times, and I don't know what that means, but yeah, I have experienced that.
And follow-up question, has it happened to you that after doing a session, you talk with someone else, it could be later, right? And when I mean later, I mean a few months later or something like that, and they start describing exactly what you were viewing, but they may tell you, hey, I was dreaming about this or something like that.
Oh, now that has happened on a number of occasions. People have felt that they saw me in their dreams. People have felt that I was around a particular event, or they've had flashes of things. I have had a couple of occasions with two of my sisters where they had a particularly interesting dream or an intense dream. And it literally, when they described it to me, it was literally out of a session. It was literally something I had viewed not that long ago before they had that experience, that dream. So yeah, it's funny. We're all connected. I believe we're all connected. There is no separation between us. And the more involved in all this work, I think the more fluid your experience becomes, and the more you can influence or be influenced by others. And I think it's actually quite beautiful to have those things happen, to see the ripples just go out over through the world, through the universe. And yeah, we're part of something bigger, we're bigger than we think. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pablo. There are no hands up at the moment, so I'll go to a Facebook question here from Adrienne. And she asked, what were the results of your RV project on the origins of the universe and origins of humanity?
Yeah. Okay. So I looked at that a long time ago with my group, and, the results of those sessions, and I've looked at it since. And so it's been kind of a learning experience to try to understand esoteric, I'll call it, data. So esoteric, I mean, the unfounded, the targets where the answer could be anything and you have no basis of evaluation. You can't compare it to a picture or a photograph or something known. It's something unknown, and that's an esoteric target. So what I've discovered over the years of looking at that multiple times, so the origins of the universe, it seems to have, there is a high, all the sessions I've seen on this. So this goes back to the early days of TDS. This even goes back to people viewing this at Farsight, because that used to be a target that Courtney would give out in the classes now and then. And in my viewings of this kind of similar thing today, there is this overwhelming sense of consciousness, which was described differently in the past, only because I think people are wrestling with this interpretation, like I talk about. It's a question of linguistics. The better you understand language, the better you understand the language you can have in this. But there's definitely, as far as the origin of the universe, this sense that it is arising from this consciousness. It's not from one being. So I'm not going to say a God created the universe. I'm going to say it's a co-creation with everything that's being created. It's like it's creating itself. So that's kind of what the data had shown in the creation of the universe, is something that is creating itself using and spreading through this whole idea of consciousness, and every single new piece of it was there from the beginning, but then is also born in whatever moment it's born in. It's this like, it's very difficult to translate in a way that makes sense. But when you experience it and you feel it, it has a very unique feel to it. It's one of those targets that if anyone ever gave it to me, I would know in 5 minutes what it was, because it's so unique. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I have a note from you here actually on Facebook to talk about your sensory deprivation tagging experiences whilst remote viewing, because that sounds amazing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I spent 3 months on a sensory deprivation tank, not 24/7, but it's one of the things that I've been super interested in, is using different kinds of technologies to enhance the experience. And I have talked about it Facebook to some degree on monitoring my brain waves, which I'm going to be talking about with Dawn and a little podcast coming up. And another technology I've used is sensory deprivation tank. And so a sensory deprivation tank is this big metallic, could be plastic, I guess, tank, and it's filled with salt water. And it's got soundproofing, it's quiet, and you just go in there. It's completely pitch black. You can't see a darn thing, can't hear anything, can't see anything, and you really can't feel anything because you're floating in this heavily salted water. It's very salted so that you don't sink. You could fall asleep and you won't drown. And I did 2 sessions a day for just over 3 months in a sensory deprivation tank. This was just a few years ago, so it's pretty recent. And it was the most incredible remote viewing experiences that I've ever had were in that tank. It was amazing. Just the deadening of sound, the lack of intrusion from the outside world, just the quiet, the stillness, and the darkness. I could open my eyes and I would only see the target. I wouldn't see the rest of the world because the rest of the world was blacked out, and it was like watching a movie. And I hadn't had that experience quite in remote viewing. I've seen plenty of times seen things play out like a movie with my eyes closed. Sometimes with eyes open, you can see things imprinted on what you're looking at. But this was a whole nother animal. It literally was like truly being someplace, literally seeing things as they are, not like on a flat screen, like they're there. It was amazing. I loved it. I did over 180 sessions in the sensory deprivation tank, and I plan on getting one for myself from my backyard because holy crap, that was amazing.
Was that in like an ERV style kind of remote viewing situation?
Yes. Yeah. It was like an ERV. I just kind of freeformed it, let myself think about, what I would do is this was kind of this was like assign the target after the fact, because what I would do is I have like a gazillion randomized targets that I've set up over the years. It's just the number's so long, you can never guess which one's coming up. And I would just have the session, and then I would just like press the button, bloop. And I'm like, oh, that's what I viewed. Yeah, that's what I viewed. I was there. Yeah.
Excellent.
Give it like an ERV.
Yeah. Yeah. Dave, you got your hand up?
Yeah. Quick question. So I use CRV. I was trained by Paul originally. So what I wanted to ask you but I've learned over time of many sessions, you get, at least I do, I'm sure others do, you get these little symbolic gestures from the subconscious mind to indicate something. You see it, you've experienced it before, so it kind of gives you an understanding. It's like a database, what have you. For instance, you might, if you're doing something in antiquity and you get some kind of, say there is some kind of esoteric aspect with high technology, and yet it feels old. So you get this kind of weird, you're like, oh, I've got this before. Like, I feel like I'm in an old place, but I have this futuristic stuff that kind of fits out of place. And how this relationship kind of develops, where your subconscious mind is pushing this message across and you're interpreting it. You may have a sketch of a person in bonds, and it may not be, that person may not actually be in cuffs, but it's indicating to you that this person's in some kind of bondage or something. So my question is there's a lot of methods that tend to keep developing new tools, new ways to kind of just get these same answers. And from my perspective, once I kind of reach this threshold of like stage 4.5, it's kind of my oyster. I could ask whatever question I want. I can get any high, as long as I just prompt myself for it, I could attain these answers. So I guess my question is from your perspective, how much is it percentage wise, this relationship of developing over time versus specific methodology and the way they go about it, their tools? That's my question.
Yeah, I think in many ways the methodology is irrelevant. I think the most important thing is your relationship to your own mind and developing that relationship and learning the language that works for your own mind. And that's like the whole thing about linguistics and translation that I'm going to talk about at length in the future. I think that's the most important part, is understanding yourself and understanding why you call things what you call them, why you describe things the way you do, why you come to the conclusions that you do. The more that you can self-analyze and discover the reasons for these things, the better you're going to be at all of this. And it really is irregardless of the methodology. Now, having said that, I do think that some methods can help provide different kinds of data that maybe you're not used to experiencing when you're sitting and doing with just a paper and pen. You're kind of limited in a way because the feelings and this is where the whole idea of translation really comes into play, is when you start feeling things in your body. Now, like, scientists have now proven that we've got neurons in our gut, right? That's where the whole gut feelings come from, seat of intuition comes from. There's a lot of parts in our body that produce data that we're not getting out. And I think that the different methodologies can assist in the richness of an experience. But I think all methods work. It doesn't even matter what you do. You could come up with, your own completely unique method with using a yo-yo remote viewing, and it would be just as valid as any other method.
I think that's already out there, Birdie. Sorry.
Oh, see, I am not surprised. So it comes down to not just practice. Practice doesn't make perfect. That's like a stupid saying that isn't quite real. What makes perfect is good practice. And so you want to establish a good practice. It's like if you're I'm a musician, I play guitar and banjo and a number of other instruments, mostly banjo. But if I practice my scales, say, and I practice them wrong every day or poorly or half-ass it, I'm never going to be great. But if you do things methodically, take your time and think about what you're doing right and how you can be better each time, then you're going to get somewhere. Then you'll get to Carnegie Hall or the Grand Ole Opry or wherever you want to end up. And it's the same thing with remote viewing. So you take the method that resonates with you. I think that's really important for people. It's not like my method is better than CRV or TDRV or SRV or TRV or ABC, whatever. It's just find what resonates with you, what seems like it's going to be a fun and a good time, and just go to town on it. What I'm working on now, my new method now, it's not new, it's new to talking about, but this is really more a method of introspection and understanding yourself on a really deep level so that you can have a better experience and a better translation. So really, it's more of a translation protocol than anything else. And I think that it's something unique and interesting, but it doesn't mean that it's better than anything else. It's just interesting to me, and I think it's pretty cool.
Thanks, Birdie.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Don, you're up again next.
Yeah, excuse me. Okay. Have you, how do I want to say this? Have you noticed any correlation between the mood that you have when you start your session and your results? And the reason I'm asking this is because a friend of mine was saying, "Oh, my sessions have been terrible lately, and I've gotten in a rut, and I can't seem to get out of it." And my response was, "Well, it seems to me every time I get myself into the mood of what I want to feel like when I get the feedback, like, oh boy, look, I got it, I did good, blah, blah, blah." If you can get that feeling before you start, it's almost like passing it forward. It just helps. Now, have you noticed anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, oh God, I've done so many sessions. It's insane, and over a very long period of time. And I think today, the way I look at it is I'm just excited. I just am excited to have a new experience. It's like getting new shoes for school, or, that's what it feels like to me. Every session is like, whoa, I can't wait. I can't wait. I didn't care if it's a stupid, if it's a really stupid target that somebody gave me, because they just want to prove it to themselves that it's real. I don't care. Everything is exciting. Everything is exciting to me. But honestly, way at the beginning, I definitely had a lot of anxiety. I mean, like the kind of the normal performance anxiety. I wanted to hit the target and all that. And all that takes a long time to work itself out of your system. Now it's just like it's like going to Disneyland or anything like that. It's an experience, more like going on a hike, because I'm a hiker. I'm not a big crowd. So
you've gotten
person.
Beyond the performance anxiety. Now
Completely.
It's more like an investigation. Completely. You really
It is. Yeah. On my classes, I'm only teaching a couple of classes. I'm not getting back into teaching. I used to teach a lot, and I'm more interested in answering questions and working on all kinds of research that I'm doing. But I am going to teach every now and then. But one of the things I'm doing for the 2 classes coming up is I'm letting the students get together, and I don't even care what they pick. They can pick literally anything, anywhere, anytime, and give it to me blind. And I'm going to do a full-on mapping session for them in front of them. And I will have no anxiety, because I know because you get what you get. It's going to be glorious. So
sure. Okay.
anyone who's here, who's coming to one of the classes, start thinking what you want me to view for you, because I'm going to show you a good time.
All right. Thank you.
That sounds a little more X-rated than I intended to.
Thanks, Don.
Yeah.
Chris, you got your hands up for next?
All right. Hey, Birdie. Thanks for doing the dash chat. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I got a fun question for you.
Awesome.
So, and this is something like you said, and I guess other people say it too, where you do a session, you learn about yourself. So this kind of is a little bit personal, but yeah, I guess maybe after a session, do you ever get like inspired creatively? I know you said banjo or
yes
to write. Is there anything? Because I notice that a lot with myself when I do creative writing. But yeah, I was curious what your thoughts on that were. And I guess to kind of put it in another perspective, like when I am doing creative writing, it kind of feels like I'm, almost doing a session. Like, oh, this is going to happen next, and this part goes here. So I was wondering what your thoughts were about that.
Oh yeah, totally. I love using session work as a bouncing off place for writing. I do a lot of writing. I published a whole bunch of science fiction books under a number of pen names, which I will never reveal to any of you, but maybe you'll figure out which ones they are. And I love it. I love it, love it, love it. I even did once. Anyone here, if you go on Reddit, there's a subreddit called No Sleep where you share scary stories. And this was a few years back. And I just used remote viewing. I decided, okay, I'm gonna do some sessions, and the production of those sessions is going to be stories I'm going to post there on Reddit. And people went nuts over them. I swear they went crazy. They thought it was like the best stuff they've ever read. They were just like so scared and so excited. And yeah, you can use this as a tool for writing. I do it all the time. It's one of my favorite things to do. And for music, I've heard music in sessions, a lot of alien music when I look at alien stuff, but also music from the past. I'm really curious about ancient music. And so I've done a number of sessions on ancient music and to hear what it sounded like. And you can hear voices and the instruments, and it can be very surprising and hard to recreate, you know, to hold that memory and to recreate. So I have done sessions at the piano or with the guitar or banjo. If I'm doing a musical session where I'm specifically looking for that data. But that's another area of interest for me too. So that's a really great question, Chris. So yes, use it to explore all those things. You'll be amazed at who you end up channeling, so to speak. You know, I don't know if it's the same thing as channeling or not, but writing is, to me, it's just pure remote viewing. It really is. When I get in the zone, it's not even coming from me. God knows where it's coming from. It's amazing.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Birdie, on that. And Chris, to add to that, I recently found an amazing book, and everything in the book can be a reference to remote viewing as well. But there's a fantastic book called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. I absolutely recommend that to every remote viewer out there. It's fantastic.
Yeah, also drawing on the right side of the brain. Yeah. Another great one for remote viewers. And I highly recommend all of Ian McGilchrist's work. Now it's a little intellectual, a little thick, hard to read, but highly recommend, or watching his stuff on YouTube. He's got tons of video lectures out where he's been interviewed. He is one of the premier brain researchers out there talking about the difference between the right and the left hemisphere, and watch his stuff, and it will completely revolutionize how you think about your own mind and how it works. And you'll find that your remote viewing skills go up several notches just by watching his videos. I swear, that's a promise.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Chris. Pablo, you have your hand up next.
Thank you. So, Birdie, originally I was going to create a list of questions, right? And I said, let's make it fun. My intention is pick up the questions as we go, right? So I made a few questions a moment ago, but after you mentioned 10,000 routes, you mentioned how to practice well and stuff like that, something popped up in my mind. And I remember Gary Langford, in one of the last things he published in the 10,000 routes, he mentioned that sometimes, he did, or probably many times he did, like small sessions, let's say no full-fledged, not formal sessions, but quick remote viewings of daily things. And that really helped him, keep improving, like you were saying, getting used to the language and being more proficient on that. So do you do something similar to that beyond your usual full-fledged sessions, like mini exercises just to keep everything on tune?
I used to have a meditation practice. I really don't do that anymore unless I'm under some great stress. I sometimes will listen to the binaural beats music before a session, but that's kind of rare. I don't really need to. The one thing that I am consistent with is using different brainwave devices to monitor my brainwaves. I do use those almost every session because it's been a very long-term experiment that I've been engaged in for around 9 years, where every session I do, I am monitoring my brainwaves, and I have found that the feedback on that helps me become a better viewer, because I can determine when I am I can like make myself have a deeper experience by managing my own brainwaves just through biofeedback, through many, many times viewing and watching my brainwaves. I can manipulate them pretty much at will now during a session, which has been extraordinarily helpful. So I don't even need a cool down anymore. I just get my brain into that mode and I'm off and running. So that's kind of my meditation practice now, is just tuning my brain in. But it's taken a long time to get to that point, to be able to do that. And that's just biofeedback and practice. Literally anyone can do that. And I do recommend it. I have a few different devices. Dawn and I are going to be talking about these kind of devices. I'm going to show you. I'll hook myself up, but they don't, there are expensive devices out there, and there are ones that are less expensive. If anyone's interested in brainwave research, there is a consumer product called the Muse, which is, it's like a couple $100, I think, if I recall correctly. And it works actually pretty well. And it does have, the software that it comes with isn't the best, because it only gives you direct biofeedback with like smiley faces and little birds chirping, but you can get an app on the App Store. It's available for Android and iOS called Mind Monitor, I believe. And it's like $10 or $20. Absolutely worth it, because it will show you your live brainwaves, all the different alpha, beta, theta, gamma, blah, 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 as they're going. But I did write my own applications for the Muse, and I use an emotive Epoch 14, and I have this whole full skull crazy brainwave apparatus that I had a researcher at UNM develop for me, that literally they took a mold of my head to make this absolutely perfect. And so that one's pretty cool, but it's a pain in the butt so I usually use the Epoch, but the Muse is pretty nice. I actually think I have, it's on my desk. Oh, here's the, yeah.
Now that you're mentioning that, I didn't do it like full-fledged, right? But I used a backyard brain device and recorded them. My experiment at that time was whether we could kind of capture in a wave the target and then use it with someone else without even a TRN, right? And see if that worked. It was short-lived, not that long experiment, but I did find some kind of transfer of information using that. Have you noticed anything of that?
So like, if you're viewing something that someone else is viewing, I think I'm a little confused by what you're asking. Ask again. I'm like,
it was on my mind rather than on my voice, right? So basically what I did is doing some sessions, recording the waves, right?
Right.
Then, extract them. I actually did some Fourier transforms to get the spectrum right and get like the key points of the signal. Okay. We know, like what you were mentioning, there are many layers. And then it doesn't matter if it was transforming that into a sound or something like that. I just played with someone else and asked them to do a session, and it really, most of the time, matched, like if they were having the same target.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can have those kinds of experiences with other people, and that actually can be an extraordinarily profound experience to work together to do sessions. That's one thing I like doing I love doing sessions with other people, not just like sitting at the same table, but having a real interaction where you're talking with someone and you're both viewing, not a monitor and a viewer. That can be kind of fun too. But I really like doing group viewing sessions where people talk about what they're experiencing and they share that experience with the others in that group setting. And it can be extraordinarily profound, because they will say and do things that you're feeling and seeing yourself, and it just makes you go deeper into the experience, and it can be absolutely mind-blowing. So yeah, I think that's really cool.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pablo. I have a couple of procedural questions that came from Facebook from John Dixon.
Yeah.
And he asked, when you were doing operational work, well, what was your ideal number of viewers you prefer for operational targets? And do you prefer everyone in your remote viewing team to use the same methodology of remote viewing?
Everybody does not have to use the same methodology. It just has to be a methodology that I understand what it is and how it works. And the more important thing like for today, I mean, years ago, I liked everybody to use the same thing, the TDRV or whatever people are calling it now. I used to call it no somatics, but because it was just easier to understand what people were getting when you look at the paper and you see, oh, that's where they are, that's the stage they're at. But I've evolved so much in my thinking that today it doesn't really matter to me as long as somebody is well practiced. That's the most important thing to me today, is that they understand themselves, that they can evaluate their own data, and that they can show me that they absolutely believe this. This is the only thing that's a requirement, is you have to believe that you get what you get, and you have to believe in the integrity of the data. Because people that think, oh, I missed it, oh, I missed it, that just gets old so quick. I'd rather have people say, oh, this is really interesting, and I think this is why I said this. That's way more interesting to me than somebody who says, oh, I missed it. So that's what I'm looking for in a group, is in an operational group, or people that have that understanding that you get what you get. They're willing to do a self-evaluation after every target and understand so that they can improve over time in their translation of the experience. And it doesn't matter to me what methodology they use, but it has to be a methodology that enables them to produce a translation that anyone could understand. So I hope that answers the question. Oh, and you also asked about the number of people involved. It can really vary depending on the project, because some projects really just need one person to look at something. It's a simple question. Some things you need multiple people to look at. For what I'm doing today, what I'm interested in, I would like around a dozen people that I can really work with long-term, get to really know well, so that I can help them grow as viewers, and they can help me grow as a viewer. And we can do really cool stuff. So like around 12, up to 20, no, definitely no more than that, because I used to work with way more than that, and it becomes problematic on a lot of different levels. Number one, it's just hard to herd cats. And it's, and then there's expectations and people's feelings get hurt. And I'm too old. I have specific goals in mind, and I really would like to work with people more one-on-one, and to have them work with each other one-on-one, instead of me being at the head of a group and talking to a crowd. So I'm more interested in working with people really personally, getting to know them and helping them develop. And so I hope that answers your question.
No, that sounds great. I think we're both on the same page on that one. Anita, would you like to go again?
Yeah, it's not really a question. And yeah, sorry to get off topic, or maybe not. I just noticed I started feeling the signal of everybody here. We have a room full of remote viewers. I think everyone should take a moment, just as we're talking and listening, just feel the signal coming out of everyone's picture. It's really cool. I just noticed everyone's just glowing, and you get into everyone's different thoughts and vibe, and just do that while we're doing this. It's really cool because we can do that. You don't need ideograms and things, just feel the rays coming out.
Absolutely. I do that all the time, wherever I am. My heart is just so open these days. I mean, it took me a long time to get there. I was closed off for a while after leaving the public field, but I am so open these days and just so happy. I love all my UFO people in my UFO group. I'm a beekeeper, and those bees make me so happy. I'm like the happiest person on the planet, I think. And just getting involved with all you guys again is making me even happier. So yeah, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, everyone's emanating their own signal. It's so cool in this room together.
It is nice when we can get together and not argue for a change. That's a good one. One of the questions that came up on Facebook as well was because we're getting close to the 2 hours here, is what advice would you give to fellow remote viewers to point them in the right direction if they want to improve their session accuracy?
Yeah, if you want to improve your session accuracy, number one, don't ask that question. Your session's already accurate. No, but in all sincerely, understand that your session is already accurate. And what you may be struggling with is a translation problem. And so to improve your translation of your experience, in other words, what you write down on the paper in a session, right? The translation of your experience, which I think is a more accurate way, or at least a more interesting way of talking about it, is to examine that experience every time you have a session. So if you remote view, whatever it is, look at your session work or listen to it, or however you have recorded it or marked it in some way, whether it's through paper or a recording or simply in your own mind, and go through every single piece of that session, whether it's a sound or a taste or a color or a sense or a drawing that you did, whatever you've come with, you evaluate it and you understand why you came up with that piece of data. Now, sometimes, especially at the beginning of this process, when you first start this, and it's going to take you a long time, at minimum months, and it may take some years, some pieces of data at the beginning, when you start this process, you're not going to know why you got that. And you're going to dismiss it. You're going to say, well, that was just garbage, because you're not going to see why your mind came up with it. And that's okay. If you can't, you can't. Move on to the next piece of data. But as time goes by, you're going to find that if you go back and look at those early sessions where you had a hard time translating that data, you're going to look at it and you're going to say, oh my gosh, that's why I wrote that down. As I'm seeing that now with a few people I've been working with for a few years here, just personally, and they're now starting to see how that works. But it took me a long time to get to that point, and it will take you a long time to get to that point too, but you will get there. And when you get there, it really opens up just the whole ability, your whole ability to translate the experience and to share it with everyone and to know just how cool and real all of this is. So I hope that answers the question. That's my one piece of advice. It doesn't matter the method, really evaluate what you're doing and think about the language you're using.
No, fantastic. Great advice. So we'll just end with the last couple of questions. Jamie, you've got your hand up if you want to go next.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Hey, Jamie.
Hello. I have a goofy question.
I love goofy questions.
Years ago, there was mention of working with a toy company and RVing a alien toy.
Yes.
Did that ever get released, and what was it? I asked John Vivanco, and he said he couldn't remember. So
yeah, it never did get released. The data was all over it. It was actually super interesting. There was a core concept there, but the technology wasn't there for what this device seemed to be able to do. So we weren't able to come up with a way to produce the appropriate data so that the company could actually build it. It was a wicked cool idea. And I do plan on revisiting that. I've thought about that over the years many a time because it was really interesting, but the technology absolutely wasn't there human-wise, right? And the toy company, I mean, they were just kind of interested to see what we could come up with. And they were kind of they were happy that they couldn't do anything with it because it was just like, well, they thought, well, we can't do this yet, but maybe someday. So it was just fun.
Gotcha. I've always been curious about that. Plus 3D printing's a thing now. So
see, I know. Look how much has changed in just the 20 some odd years since I left the field. It's just amazing. We have all this cool stuff we can do these days. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. We're at the 2-hour mark. Does anyone else any last questions for Birdie Prue, or we reached the end of these now? I've reached ones on Facebook, so we covered all those. I think we're at the end then.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm really happy to have been asked to talk with you.
Thank you for coming along. And I think I speak on behalf of everyone here and say thank you for taking the time and answering these questions. And we look forward to speaking to you further now that you're back and hearing on what you're going to explore and share with us.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm planning to be extraordinarily open with everything I'm doing. I'm going to be doing that lecture series, and I want everyone to join me in it and to think about what I'm talking about and to maybe try to apply some of it in your own viewing and see what you think. And it's just fun for me. I love everybody in the field and I admire and respect everyone. And I'm just excited to be openly a part of it again. So I was pushed out of the closet, but I'm glad I got pushed out. It's kind of like getting pushed off into the deep end and learning how to swim. I'm dog paddling, guys.
Back bigger and better.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. And, you know, we'll all keep in contact and share all your bits with me, and we'll put it on all the Facebook pages and Discord and everywhere else. And, you know, we'll get a buzz going for you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Des. I really appreciate it. And I'm really serious about having that RV extravaganza out here in Albuquerque. We can all get together and just make a super fun time of it. So let's think about it.
Yeah, pass us the details and we'll see what buzz we can generate on social media.
All right.
Okay, well, that's great, everyone. Thanks for coming along and thanks for asking all the questions as well. Take care out there. Have a great weekend. And yeah, I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Birdie.
Bye.
Thank you, Des, for
Take care,
hosting.
everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, see everybody.
Birdie. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye, Birdie. It's so nice to meet you. See you.
Bye. Nice to meet you all.